Welcome to another exciting episode of Legitimate Matters. You know, as I was thinking back on this year and even the year ahead, I asked myself, where are we today? Politics is seemingly out of control to some degree. There are so many challenges that we face from day to day, and Legitimate Matters is all about inspiring my viewers to find solutions and find ways to really manage and to cope and to develop those coping mechanisms so that we can make more better informed decisions. I'm so excited today to have a great guest on my show, Joseph Holland. Joseph, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, William. So great to be here.
Well, Joseph, I'm excited, and I want my viewers to know why I'm excited. I'm excited because you have done so much in the course of your young life to inspire and to be a leader, and you've made a real impact in the lives of so many. And you've done that through working in a homeless shelter, you're in politics, you've had an impact in Harlem, the lives of men, and you're an author, you're an attorney. I said to you before we started rolling the cameras that we should have a panel here of 5 different people, and they would all be Joseph Holland. Well, Joseph, I'm going to turn this over to you and tell us a little about yourself and how your most recent book came to be, Vigorous Virtues. And from this point, I'm going to let you tell my viewers who you are.
Well, thank you, William. You know, once again, I'm really delighted to be here because your purpose is my purpose. Because when you talk about inspiring your viewers, my chief aim is to be inspirational in all that I do, and that really comes from how I was raised. I had 2 great parents. In fact, my dad ended up from very humble beginnings, becoming a U.S. ambassador, and was a great role model for me. And then I went on from that family background and then got further strength and inspiration through my spiritual life.
I see.
And that made me make some choices that some people didn't really understand or affirm, but I was fortunate. I had an Ivy League background in Cornell and BA and MA to Harvard Law School, where I got my law degree. And instead of going to Wall Street, I had a law firm offer there.
Okay.
I ended up saying, no, I want to put myself in a position where I can give back to community. So I moved to Harlem and lived and worked there for many years, and I still do. And that allowed me to be in a position to not only give back to community, but also to grow into my own fullness, into my own purpose, into my own destiny. And so I've done a number of different things as I've pursued that destiny.
Well, you've had tremendous opportunities. You mentioned that you attended Cornell. You have a law degree from Harvard, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
You could have done so many things, or you could have made so many choices, I should say, and taken your life in a completely different direction. But how do you go from Harvard to working in other capacities in a destination or a community like Harlem? Not that there isn't much work to be done, so I get that. But what was it inside of you that caused you to take that turn in such a profound direction in your life?
It was really a sense of let's call it divine calling.
Okay.
Right. I sense that there was really something different that God wanted me to do with my life, and the
Okay.
scripture that resonated for me: to whom much is given, much is required.
I see.
And because that resonated with me in such a powerful way, I decided, and this was contrary to the advice of my parents and my professors and
imagine.
my peers, who all thought I was a little off and saying no to Wall Street and yes to 125th Street. I decided to go. I decided to go in that direction, and I have to tell you, William, it was challenging.
I'm sure.
For me, particularly earlier on, because I'm not from Harlem. I grew up in the South, Virginia, on the campus of Hampton University, and then spent some time in Europe growing up, and then in the suburbs. So I didn't have that urban background and understanding. So it was a steep learning curve.
You see, that's what makes this conversation for me. That's what makes me so curious about this type of a transition, because you have a different background. You mentioned that you had your dad is certainly an acclaimed individual, being an ambassador to Scandinavia and being involved in sports. You come from a two-parent home. You've attended Ivy League schools. You grew up in Virginia. Others out there would be looking at this and saying, well, this is a privileged individual. But yet you found yourself in an environment with underprivileged. And you have to now take all of that and find a way to not you just relate to them, but them relate to you. That's puzzling, but very, very relevant, because you've made an impact on the lives of these individuals. How did this all transpire? What comes after? Is it the chicken or the egg? What came first and next? You've had this spiritual calling on your life, and even though no one else understood it, you did.
Yes.
And it was a passion inside of you. But now you have to move forward, and in spite of what the voices that you're hearing from others, and break through barriers. And this is important for viewers, because we all want to break through barriers, but we struggle to find a way to do that. How do you do that?
Well, the best way for me to illustrate my response to that was with an account from my days when I started and ran a homeless shelter in Harlem, Hawk Homes. And one day at the shelter, counseling it was a men's shelter, a small 15 men in the basement of a church. And I'm counseling one of the men, and I used an Ivy League word that he really didn't understand, and he kind of pushed back at me. And but then he says, Rev, he called me Rev, I also, went to college, and took me by surprise. And I said, well, you did? He said, yeah. And I said, which college? He said, UCLA. I said, UCLA? And he leaned in, looked at me. He says, yes, the university on the corner of Lenox Avenue.
Okay, all right.
But his point was that, book knowledge is important, but street knowledge is important too. And I had to have the humility, right, in what I was doing, so that I could be open to learn from guys like him about what it is that I didn't get in the classroom at Cornell or in the lecture hall at Harvard, but would allow me to understand all of the dynamics that go into what really makes a solution
Got it.
to his problems and the problems of others.
I like that word solution because that's what we all are looking for in our personal lives, in our professional lives. It's always about solutions. We're going to go to break. And when we come back, let's talk about some of those solutions that you came up with and the transition from your first book to your current book and how that has changed lives and how you continue to change lives. Legitimate Matters, William Paris. A great story, great conversation. We'll be right back.
His dream became our reality. In celebration of Black History Month and those who paved the way, embrace our story, her story, his story. Black History Month. Now make your story. She took a stand by simply sitting still. In celebration of Black History Month and those who paved the way, embrace our story, her story, his story. Black History Month. Now make your story.
Hi, this is William Paris, Legitimate Matters. Follow me on Twitter. That's at LegitimateWCP.
What if you could invest in the future of kids, like a stock? Not the kind of stock that's about making money, but a stock for social change. A whole new kind of investment called Better Futures. When you invest, it helps kids go to college. Believe in us, invest in us, watch us grow. My name is Sydney, and I'm your dividend.
Welcome back to Legitimate Matters. Your host, William Paris, here having a great conversation with my guest, Joseph Holland. Joseph, before we went to break, you brought up the word solution. And I think that that is an important word, certainly for me, as I find myself always exploring and reading and looking for things that will be a solution for myself and even for the viewers. You've written several books, and I believe that these books may have been or may offer solutions. Tell us about your writing and what took you from one to the next.
My premise, William, is a simple thought. You know, the choices of life determine the success of life, and those choices derive from our values.
Okay.
And my writings, my passion has been writing. I'm a lawyer by background, and that's what I've done professionally. And then I do some community work and some entrepreneurial work. But I've been writing throughout. I've written plays, and then I began to write books. And I've started with a memoir.
Okay.
About my first 25 years in Harlem. It's called From Harlem with Love.
Okay.
And that really was a history of not only my experience in Harlem, but of Harlem's history.
Okay.
Right? And then I went to an inspirational self-help book called The Touchstone Tools.
Okay.
And that was really about my work in the homeless shelter and principles that I learned that became solutions to the struggles that the homeless men were facing. And now in my latest book, which just came out, called The Vigorous Virtues, Daily Success Principles from Diverse American Founders, I put my sort of passion for history and my passion for success principles and inspirational virtues together. And I delve into American history, and I find role models, people who lived with virtue, and that led to success, some of it historic and trailblazing success. And because of that, there are life lessons that we can draw to the present. What makes this book unique is the diversity of these historic role models. Because yes, there's some familiar founders there, but there's also African Americans, Native Americans, Hispanic, and Asian Americans. There is a whole blend of these role models that we can draw lessons from.
So what I heard you say, and by the way, I purchased the book, and
Thank you.
I had I purchased the book because I wanted to understand your work, but after purchasing the book, I can tell you that I will be reading this book throughout 2020 because just from the little bit that I was able to digest, I do find it to be rather inspirational. And it's a combination of tools, and what you're offering in the book are tools. But what I'm also hearing you say is that it's something for everyone in this book.
Yes. And that's really the key because, as you know, William, we're in a time in America of great divisiveness.
Absolutely.
And the social discord that we're experiencing, whether it's in social media or in political discourse, like what's going on right now in Washington, D.C.,
Right.
or, just whether in schools or in street violence.
All across America.
It stems from a loss of what I call foundational virtues. And we need to emphasize on those values that we share that can bring us together instead of those issues that drive us apart.
That is a very good point because I read you made reference to this in the introduction of your book, and it caused me to kind of scratch my head a little bit because you were talking about the values of really the country or what the country was founded on, but you mentioned viewing this from a positive perspective versus the divisive and the negative way we look at the foundation of how this country was established is where I'm going with that. And the average, well, I can't say the average because I haven't done a survey, but from my own perspective, I find that this country was founded on diversity, and it was founded on bigotry and elitist and racism and all kinds of things that we still experience today. We're going to go to a break, but I want you to help us and my viewers to understand what is it that we're missing and how we can use the tools and certainly your book to perhaps have a different perspective that instead of holding us back or keeping us in a stagnant place might actually elevate us. And I believe that that's where you're going with the book, but I haven't gotten there and I haven't read enough to really get there. So I'm going to go to break, and when we come back, help my viewers to understand that.
Be glad to.
William Paris, Legitimate Matters, great conversation. We will be right back.
Black History Month is huge. It's a way for us to reconnect with our history.
Continue to celebrate and acknowledge the immense amount of contributions that Black people have made.
Black History Month is a celebration of culture.
Another opportunity for everyone to remember that we're all human. And to have a month that reminds people that Black history is American history.
More than just having names and numbers and dates that are in a book.
To remember how important it is to be Black.
I think that the importance of Black History Month is that if you don't know where you came from, you're not going to be prepared for where you're going.
We all stand on the shoulders of somebody else. If I stand tall, it's because I'm standing on the shoulders of those who came before me.
Black history.
More than a month.
Hi, this is William Paris, Legitimate Matters. Follow me on Facebook. That's facebook.com/Legitimate Matters.
Everywhere that we go, he makes people laugh and makes people smile, and I feel like I have that quality.
He's the one who always takes me fishing.
I watch golf with him. And
I watch him cook, because when I grow up, I want to be a cook too.
We have the same faces like this.
Dad is the one, when you fall, that picks you up.
That unconditional
sense of presence and reassurance is really what makes him my father.
Welcome back to Legitimate Matters once again. I am your host, William Paris. I'm here having a great conversation with my guest, Joseph Holland. Joseph, in the last segment, we were talking about the progression of your 3 books, and we left off with Vigorous Virtues. So tell us more about how the book is structured and what your objective was for writing the book.
This book, Vigorous Virtues, is a reimagining of American history. As we look at what's happened in this country, and we do it segments, right? You know, there's the founders, and they did this, and then there's African American history, and then there's Native American history. And so the book is an attempt to say, no, America is really about all of us. And all of our contributions is what made America. And I don't want to use the word great because it's been so distorted, but really shaped American character and accomplishments in the way that has, sustained us, and it has made us the most powerful nation on earth, and some say in the history of mankind. And that has really been about the contributions of all of us. So yes, the book is 365 days. It's a devotional, and each day it's about a different person who has made a difference in his or her life. And yes, there's some founders in here, but they're African Americans, Native Americans, Hispanic and Asian Americans, all people who are in there, not because they represent a certain ethnicity, but because they made a difference in their lives, in their own particular way. And of course, there's some, Harriet Tubman, there's a movie about her out now.
Right.
And so, she's in the book because, she accomplished great things in her life on the Underground Railroad.
Right.
But then, there are some unsung heroes. I also have a woman, her name is Mary Ellen Pleasant. Most people haven't heard about her, but she's in the chapter, it's the month of July, it's called Industriousness, because, she left New England, then went south, and then when the gold rush out in the 1852 in San Francisco, she went out there, and this is the principle now, because she was savvy in what she did, she was able to make a fortune and use that fortune to build the Underground Railroad out on the West Coast so that, slaves could find freedom out there as well.
Well, what I like about your book, among many things, besides these great stories and certainly individuals that had such an impact on the building of this country, and those, as you said, unsung heroes, all of that. But you've taken each of these individuals, and not only are you taking us on a journey and telling us their individual stories and their victories and success and their contributions, but then you're making the story what I would consider to be relevant and applicable so that we can actually use these principles to develop our own tools, if you would, our own tools and methods for making better decisions in our own personal lives.
Give you a quick illustration here. Joseph DeCastro, and he's in the chapter called Courage. That's January.
Courage.
Yes, Courage. And it's entitled Seize Your Battlefield. He's a Hispanic American, but this is in the Civil War era. And he joined the Union Army in a key battle in 1863. He was actually a flag bearer, but he took his flag. He was representing the Massachusetts Regiment, and he crossed the battlefield and used his flag as a weapon to seize the flag of the flag bearer who was holding the Virginia flag.
Wow.
And seized the flag, ran back across the battlefield, presented it to his general, and that was such a moment of inspiration that the Union forces won the battle that day. That was a contributing factor in their victory. And the principle here is pugnacious, right? There are times when, life is a fight for territory, and we have to move forward, and we have to seize our battlefield, right?
Wow.
So
okay.
It's important that we look to the past. We want to know these unsung heroes, but we also want to draw life lessons so that we can apply those lessons and, once again, borrowing your word, have those solutions that make us more victorious in our daily living.
You said something, and this kind of tied it all together for me. And I'm just going to find it. It's going to take a hot second, because what you said in your introduction, and I'm not going to spend too long because we don't have a lot of time. Well, yes, you said, and you will be empowered. This is so important. You will be empowered by the truth of what you're becoming on the inside is ultimately more important than what you're achieving on the outside. I took that, I highlighted it in your book, because to me, I thought that those words in and of itself were powerful about what's on the inside, developing what's on the inside, as opposed to always looking at the exterior and material types of things that we put so much energy into achieving when we miss what's most important, and that is our own virtue, determining what our own healthy values are.
The values of life, William, determine the success of life. We're all going to have obstacles. There are going to be circumstances that will be lined up against us to thwart us, to push us back. We could be treated unfairly. There could be discrimination, racism, sexism, whatever it is. But it's important that we get in touch with what our values are, because if we strengthen those values and we learn to have enlightenment and encouragement from those values, then we can overcome whatever it is that's holding us back.
We have a minute left. And in that 1 minute, I want you to look at this camera, and I want you to just, in a few words, explain values, because I want that to be a takeaway, because we don't always know what those are.
The values are what's most important to you. And if you can dig deep inside, maybe they come from your faith, maybe you heard them from a mentor or a family member. For me, the value really is, having a strong faith in God, in myself, so that I'm inspired to move forward and make every day the best that it can be. And so whatever it is for you, get in touch with it. This book will help. There may be other books that will help, but it's important for you to get in touch with your values and use them for inspiration to live each day with victory.
Joseph Holland. The book is called Vigorous Virtues. I am William Paris, and I'm your host on Legitimate Matters, and this has been a very legitimate conversation. Joseph, I can't thank you enough. As a matter of fact, will you come back?
Absolutely.
We have a lot to talk about. This wasn't enough time.
I look forward to it.
You're a great guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.